morning. This hearing is called to order. This is a public hearing of the City Council Committee on Law and Government. The purpose of this public hearing is to hear testimony on Bill number 200006 and resolution number 200040, bill numbers 200075, 200076, 200077, and 200078, and resolution numbers 200079, 200080, and 200081 are being held at the request of their sponsors, and they will not be heard today. I want to recognize the presence of a quorum of committee members. Members of the committee in attendance are to my left, Councilman Derek Green; to my right, Councilmember Squilla, Canones Sanchez; and also to my left is Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson, who was appointed to the committee by the president. With that being said, I want to just make sure that I give some opening remarks regarding today's hearing. And for the benefit of the public, I want you to know that the first day of council was just 2.5 weeks ago. But in just the first 2 council sessions, 13 ballot questions were introduced. A few ballot questions were envisioned for elections later in 2020 or even in 2021. However, that still left us with 7 to 9 potential ballot questions for the April 28th ballot. However, we now only have remaining 7 to 9 ballot questions. We also didn't have the luxury of time to wait several weeks before hearing all of their associated bills and resolutions, because for the record, with ballot questions, the city commissioners must have them no later than the end of February in order to get them on the April ballot. And that means any legislation must be passed by council and signed by the mayor by the end of February. We scheduled 2 Law and Government Committee hearings for this week, with about half of the potential April ballot questions advertised for Monday and then half for Wednesday. With that being said, I want to say a special thank you to all members of council who worked together so that we could wean down the number of potential ballot questions for April, so that we are now potentially only at 3 ballot questions for April. And that's much more manageable number for our city commissioners and voters. 2 ballot questions passed out of committee on Monday. 1 regarding political activity, which could be incredibly important during this election, and 1 establishing a permanent Department of Labor to better enforce all worker protection bills that this council has passed in a few years. And so I will argue that these ballot questions need to be on April's ballot due to their sensitive nature. And today, we are considering just 1 ballot question, which I would say is just as time sensitive as the other 2. The ballot question being considered today asks if graduates of career and technical education should get civil service preference when they apply for city jobs. Now, in this time when we have both high youth and underemployment and rising homicides, we need to use every tool in our toolbox to get more of our young people into good, stable jobs. And this is an issue that can't wait, and it needs to be on April's ballot. Now, I'm going to say this for the record. If there is anyone here and they're here to testify about any specifics regarding how the civil service preference may work, I just want to remind you that the only legislation we are considering today are the bill and resolution associated with the broadly worded ballot question. So again, if anyone is concerned about the constructs of how the civil service preference would work, this is not that bill. That will be done under a separate bill. The bill that actually will specify that is bill number 200007, and that will be heard by by this committee at a later date. And it's with that being said that I now want to ask the sponsor of the bill, our colleague, Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson, to say a few words. And I also want to just state for the record, Councilwoman, I want to thank you for your due diligence. I want to thank you for your research and taking the lead on this very important issue here in City Council, because it's one that's part of the solution we need to address a myriad of problems in the city.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman Parker, and to Vice Chair Green, my fellow colleagues. I want to especially thank the members of the public who came to have their voices heard today and share their viewpoints with this committee. This bill was introduced in a package with another bill and resolution that were referred to another committee. The bill in today's hearing is simply about submitting an amendment to the qualified electors of the City of Philadelphia to provide for a preference in civil service examinations for graduates of career and technical education programs and schools within the School District of Philadelphia. The question states, shall the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter be amended to provide for a preference in civil service examinations for any qualified graduate of a career technical education program in the School District of Philadelphia? Moreover, I want to acknowledge that we have made a commitment to all of the stakeholders, including the unions that may be affected by this legislation, including but not limited to DC 33, DC 47, the International Association of Firefighters, and the Fraternal Order of Police, just to name a few. We will be in constant communication regarding the companion bill, and I look forward to doing that over the coming weeks before the committee hearing in Labor and Civil Service. And lastly, I want to say this, and I need everyone to hear me very clearly. We suffer from a horrible disease in the city of Philadelphia, and it's a disease called apathy. If we continue to do the same things, we will be left with the same results of unfilled and hard-to-fill positions without a skilled workforce able to take on these positions of responsibility in our city government. If we were doing such a great job already, we would not have so many open and/or hard-to-fill positions. This is not about excluding anyone, but increasing our ability to hire a skilled and diverse workforce ready to fulfill our city's needs on day one. This legislation, allowing the qualified electors to decide, is a first step in a multi-step conversation I intend to lead around being serious about workforce development in the city of Philadelphia. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Quinonez Sanchez.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank Councilmember Gilmore Richardson for proposing this, and I look forward to the conversations as we work at the skills gap, workforce development, this space around how do we create a pipeline that is different than the one we keep talking about, which is a pipeline from schools to jail. I say this as a proud graduate of a CTE program. For my freshman year, I went to Girls High, and I transferred over to Mastbaum because I just wasn't sure if I was college material. In my 11th grade, I had the opportunity to, through a robust CTE program that we have to get to, and we'll talk about that later as we work with the school district. In my junior year, I had the opportunity to go work for Cigna. In my senior year, when I was credit ready, I had, again, another opportunity to come and work within the corporate America. These opportunities offered me the ability to come downtown and see things differently than what I knew in my beloved Hunting Park. We need to be talking about the realignment of CTE, the expansion of CTE. I have so many friends who went into career tracks. Some of them decided to go to college and advance further, and some of them with their CTE graduation certificate were able to produce or have fulfilling careers. So I want to thank Councilwoman for highlighting this, for looking at this space and saying what other things we can do. We all know, because we've had many conversations about the Human Resources Department, its resources, its ability for its testing process, all of the things that we've talked about, you know, the rule of two, but we can't ask the private sector to do things and provide opportunities for returning citizens and our young people if government doesn't do it first. So I look at this as government saying, how do we elevate, promote what we're doing show folks that these young people, I proudly have a lamp created by my Mass Comm students in my office. The welding, electrical, carpentry unit put it together. When folks tell me that young people aren't ready, I show them my lamp and I turn it on. And so that's what we're doing here, turning on and lighting up a conversation so very, very necessary. And then I will further add that this is about an and and an and and an and and an and. The recognition that there are specialized constituencies that bring different skills to the table, and that should be recognized in our process. It's not an either or. So I look forward to this conversation and many other conversations as we better align CTE, as we open up more opportunities, and as government says, we can do better. We're doing some things that are great, but how about if we do more? And then the most important part of this is the opportunity for the electorate to know that this is important to us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gill.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to add my comments, and especially to members of the audience who are here today, about how much I appreciate the sponsor of the bill bringing this issue forward. As someone who's worked on the issue of bringing our public schools back to life, as we have worked through many, many decades of disinvestment around our public schools, around our young people in particular, and have at the same time matched it with lofty rhetoric about how we can do anything and promise anything to them. We are starting to today merge those two things in a real and meaningful way. You know, our CTE programs, and many of us up here have been very supportive, but we have seen a real resurgence in them, a real investment in them. We have wonderful, outstanding principals who've been leading schools for a very long time. CTE programs are also unique because they have to be federally certified, qualified. They are held to extraordinarily rigorous standards. The young people get smaller class sizes. They overwhelmingly do better. And today, what we want is that if we're putting this effort into these young people, if we're putting the effort into their educators, their teachers, their principals who've given their heart and soul to giving them every single opportunity. I've visited many of these programs. I've visited their schools. I've been to work sites like Rebuilding Together, where I've seen CTE students with their principals working on projects. We have to give them opportunity. And this is a promise. Today is a promise to our young people. Today is a real and meaningful promise to our young people that we are taking steps forward to open doors in a real way by allowing them to have consideration within civil service. This is not taking away from any other group. Those privileges still exist for those other groups and will remain in existence. But this is also opening the door because our young people deserve a promise, because their teachers, their principals, the educators deserve a promise and a delivery, and because their families do it, and because our city needs them. So thank you very much to the sponsor of this bill. I look forward to the conversation, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The chair first wants to acknowledge the presence of Councilwoman Cindy Bass, Councilman David O, who have just joined us, and then I recognize Councilman O for remarks.
Thank you very much. I too want to say that I have nothing but respect for the sponsor of the bill. Intelligent, independent-minded, public-minded, wonderful person. I'm so happy she got elected. In our democracy, we will have different opinions, and this is one of those times where I visited the councilman to say I will be voting no. And I just wanted to explain that there should be a level playing field. Everyone has an opportunity, and I know that there's a sincere desire on the part of council and the sponsor of the bill to do the best they can for those who are seeking jobs and looking for opportunities to fulfill the needs of our city in the career and technical space. The preference is for veterans and for the children of those who have died in the line of duty, police officers and firefighters. That is a special preference because of the sacrifice that they have made. I want to respect that preference, and I believe everyone on the council, regardless of their vote, does respect that. However, I will say that I think it is something that if we begin to erode by giving preferences to any group of persons, for example, 10 points or 5 points or 2 points for a graduate of Philadelphia's career technical schools, why not 3 points for a graduate of community college or a victim of crime or someone who has had a felony and has served their time? It is a level playing field other than the fact that those who defend our freedoms have been given this preference for their service, where they put their life at risk for our nation, and to those actual municipal public servants who have taken up the calling of fighting fires and fighting crime and have died in the line of duty. So we respect their service by giving their children 10 points. It will be very difficult. I will try to be open-minded about what you say, but I will say that I already cannot see myself voting in favor of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the presence of Councilman Brian O'Neill and also recognizes Councilman Green for remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we're going to have a good conversation today. I respect all the commentary made by the various members of this body, and I want to thank the sponsor for this piece of legislation. My understanding that this being the Law and Government Committee, the question that's up for today is the question whether it should be on the ballot that a preference for in the civil service exams be allowed for a qualified graduate of a career and technical education program. This piece of legislation does not say what that preference may be. My understanding that the sponsor of the bill has been in conversations with various entities. For me, it's important as the son of a veteran, it's important that we protect and honor the service that our veterans have provided over the years. And my understanding there, in that negotiation process, there could be a possibility as a legislation, which will be in another committee, has that ability to still honor veterans at the level they're currently honored. In addition, as the uncle of 2 police officers, one is no longer with us, one is retired, I have a strong perspective and support for those men and women that protect and serve the city of Philadelphia in their capacity as a police officer. And we need to make sure we honor that preference in the city and the Civil Service Commission. And my understanding, based on the conversation I've had with the sponsor, there's been multiple conversations she has had with members of both the police department and also the fire department to make sure that we continue to maintain and honor that preference. But today's piece of legislation, and we'll take testimony on that in a few moments, is whether there should be a preference in the Civil Service Commission. My understanding, we provide a preference for those who are bilingual. My understanding of the legislation, and we'll hear from the testimony to be provided, that this only makes the request to the voters whether a preference should be, not what the preference will be. And I feel fully confident with my new colleague, Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson, and based on her conversations that she will continue to have both with members of the FOP, as well as Local 22 with the firefighters, as well as others from various veterans organizations, will be able to maintain the rightful honor and service and perspective to make sure that those who are veterans are truly honored at their full level, as well as those who are the children of officers who have been slain in the line of duty also be protected. And so with that, I look forward to hearing the conversation and the deliberation regarding this bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair recognizes Councilman O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to state that my new colleague is in a hurry because of the earlier primary this year. I want it to be clear that I think it's a good idea. I think 10 is way too many. Looking at the whole broad spectrum of the incentivizing we've done, I think police and fire, paramedics should be off. If I have a commitment for that before this is over, I don't like voting for vagueness. And I know what Councilman Green said is absolutely true, that this is very general, but it's too general for me, not knowing what the sponsor, how much the sponsor wants to limit it. Because right now it's unlimited. It's just, we're going to have discussions. And, you know, I'm looking at the other ones we have. First of all, I think it should be targeted to specific tests that are appropriate for the training that's given. Secondly, it should be in the low single digits, not the high or the low double digits. And that it clearly shouldn't deal with uniformed first responders, because that's not what the training is, and there is training for that that gets preferences. So if before this hearing's over, or if we continue this till tomorrow morning for more of that tightening up, I will wait and see. All right? Because I do think it's a good idea. I think everybody would like to, first of all, incentivize young people to go through these schools and have an extra reason to do it. But it's just the idea of voting for something that is going to happen later. Pretty good work coming out of the chute. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just for the record, I just wanted to let my colleagues know that I have made a commitment to all of the union organizations that I've spoken with last night and this morning, including the firefighters, the FOP, DC 33 and 47, that we will have continued conversation around the bill that has been referred to Labor and Civil Service and not this committee. That hearing has not been scheduled as of this time. Secondly, this legislation would not, well, that legislation in Labor and Civil Service would not take anything away from the children or grandchildren of Philadelphia firefighters or police officers who were killed in the line of duty or veterans. It just adds that we are adding a qualified graduate of a career and technical education program in the school district of Philadelphia. I have indicated that I'm willing to have additional conversation around anything we need to do to ensure that we have a comfort level with the amount of the point preference, and I'm willing to do that as we move forward in the process. So I ask my colleague, because of that, for your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, I just want to note a bit of housekeeping. Because of the long-standing commitments outside of this building that several of our members have, we may have to recess our public hearing and go into our public meeting so that those members who have to leave can actually cast their votes, and then we will come back to our public hearing to make sure we've heard all of the scheduled testimony. So I just want members of the public who are watching, if you see us sort of just make a shift, not everyone is finishing testifying, but you see members leaving their vote, it is because they have long-standing commitments outside of this building. And with that being said, I want to ask the clerk to read the title of the bill and resolution for consideration today.
Bill number 20006, an ordinance providing for the submission to the qualified electors of the City of Philadelphia of an amendment to the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter to provide for a preference in civil service examinations for any qualified graduate of a career technical education program in the School District of Philadelphia, as approved by resolution of the City Council, fixing the date of a special election for such purpose, prescribing the form of ballot question to be voted on, and authorizing the appropriate officers to publish notice and to make arrangements for the special election. And resolution number 200040, a resolution proposing an amendment to the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter, providing for a preference in civil service examinations for any qualified graduate of a career technical education program in the School District of Philadelphia, and providing for the submission of the amendment to the electors of Philadelphia.
The clerk will please call the first panel of witnesses to testify.
Mike Zakagny.
Let me say good morning to each of you. Just please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. If you decide to, as we're going through it, if you decide to summarize your testimony, I want you to know that is all right with us because we do actually have copies, and that's for anyone scheduled to testify today. If you decide to summarize, we have copies. Thank you.
I was going to ask you. Michael Zakagny, Office of Human Resources.
Good morning, Janine Labletta, Office of Human Resources.
Good morning, Candy Jones, Office of Human Resources.
Good morning, Councilwoman and the members of the committee. First, I want to say thank you for having us here. And I do want to emphasize very strongly that the goals, I think we're aligned on. We want to see more opportunities for students throughout the Philadelphia school system and all students. The question here is just how do we get that done? So we understand the challenges, and we also understand the goals of what the Councilwoman wants to do. We had a lovely conversation with her not too long ago. So what we look at from the standpoint of human resources, how do we build programs that better align? And how do we align with the students that are coming out of not only CTEs, but the high schools generally? So there are a couple of programs that are identified in the testimony similar to what we really want to look at to do. So you have Future Track that started with Streets Department. You have initiatives in the Water Department that creates opportunities for students. A number of these have already bore fruit, and I know there's still a lot more that we have to do. For example, since 2015, excuse me with the 19, that just shows my age, I think. Since 2015, 80% of hires in the positions of trades helper and public works maintenance trainee, 80% came from Philadelphia School District, and 25% of them came from CTE programs. Again, we want to be able to build those seamless transitions between where the student is and where the jobs are, and provide them with the competencies they need in order to be successful. One of the challenges, and as was said here earlier, is that us looking for trades positions is a difficult challenge for these types of positions. In fact, we pretty much go through all of these lists. So what we're looking for, instead of perhaps a preference that we think may or may not work, is really how do we build other types of programs? It's an important point that the programs that we want to build certainly will benefit CTE students, but they will benefit all students throughout the school district. And as I said earlier, this is more of not a difference in what the goal should be. This is a difference in how we get there. And we'd love to partner with the council. We'd love to partner with, and we've already have partnered with many agencies. These two women next to me have been working with the school district and will continue to work with different agencies. They're the ones that make some of this stuff work. But what we want to be able to do is look to having agile programs that we can affect, change, and modify as the needs require. So much of what we're looking to do here, we can do through regulation. We can do through building programs. And the only, if you want to say, difference of opinion, I believe, is the need to do this through a charter change. That's the summary. You have the rest of the testimony. I thank you for the opportunity to meet with you. We're ready for any questions and be thankful for any questions that you have for us.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Can you talk just a little bit further about your differences with it being a charter change and how you would envision this happening without the charter change?
So what we're looking to do is really align with the competencies that are coming out of the various different CTE programs. For example, Future Track and also Philadelphia Water Department has programs that really align with what the students are coming. And what we do is we try to build seamless transitions between those students and into the program. So we don't even have to really get involved with how people are going to line up on the list and so forth. So we're able to make that seamless transition.
So you know, and I heard you mention that earlier in your testimony. But my question is, you know, that's specific to one department. So for all of the other opportunities that exist for employment, are there similar programs and opportunities, or is it, you know, a few here and a few there? Because I think the idea behind the charter change is that it would be comprehensive and everyone would be covered. You know, I spoke with the bill sponsor earlier today, and I have some concerns about it being a charter change as well. But if it's going to make sure that there is the coverage that we want, that it's comprehensive across the board in the city of Philadelphia, then, you know, that makes a big difference than, you know, a few programs here and there. So I don't know if you want to comment on that further.
And I may ask Janine Labletta to talk a little bit about that too. So what we're doing is we're trying to expand those programs. But one of the things that we do is that we look at civil service positions that align with CTEs. We try to make sure that they clearly align. There's even some language that coming out of a program will also benefit them from the standpoint of qualifying for the different positions. Janine, would you like to?
So, for example, to Mike's point, so the Office of Fleet Management.
Excuse me, identify yourself for the record.
Sorry. Candy Jones, Office of Human Resources. Good morning again, Council. So, for example, the Office of Fleet Management aligns specifically with programs at the workforce school at Randolph for the automotive maintenance program. And so those students start the summer before their 11th grade year of high school, and they're working 40 hours a week during the summer, and then during the normal school year, they're working after school. And so the program is designed so that when they graduate and we announce automotive apprentice, it's so closely aligned to that CTE program. Only those students then qualify for that civil service position and title. And then so only those students are on that eligible list, and all of those students are given that opportunity to transition into civil service. And so what we're working to do is align more of those programs, looking holistically at civil service entry-level opportunities, looking at the CTE programs to figure out how we can expand and make those partnerships more robust as we move forward.
Good morning, Janine Labletta, Office of Human Resources. To your question, Councilwoman, I did want to point out also, trades helper is our entry-level skilled trades.
Say again?
Trades helper is our entry level into a career in civil service in the skilled trades, which align with many of these programs throughout the city in the CTE programs. Those lists are open competitive lists to the public and are used by departments throughout the city. So your concern about one-offs and only the water department or only the streets department, all of our city departments hire from certain entry-level open competitive lists. We have about 2,000 skilled trades in the city. We have many vacancies, as you know, that we're trying to fill in those skilled trade areas. So it is not only for programs that are stabilized apprenticeships housed within one department, but we do have open competitive, like our public works maintenance trainee is also used by various departments, not just the two we've cited in our example. Thank you.
And just to add, the Office of Workforce Development is also looking at this from a holistic standpoint and working with many departments across the city now that that has been established.
How many positions do you see connecting, if, you know, assuming that this bill would be passed? How many positions do you see that the CTE graduates from Philadelphia schools would be filling that are open right now, as an example? Like, just from the number of vacancies.
I don't have that vacancy number right now as to what they look like.
Okay.
We can certainly look at that and get that from the standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's important so we can get a sense of the scope of the impact of this bill. And also if there is
any additional information that you can provide to us in terms of, or provide to the sponsor, in terms of the impact in reaching the trades, and particularly around the issue of diversity in the trades. Philadelphia has had a long-standing problem of lack of diversity. The trades are pretty much all white and all male in 2020. It's still the same. It's still ridiculous. It's still totally unacceptable that we have these public works projects that don't reflect Philadelphia when it comes to the folks who are on the job, on the site. And so, you know, there's still a lot of work to do there. I know you said that there's a program that hires directly from the schools, and they can go right into the trades, but it just doesn't feel as if this is something that's actually happening. So any numbers that you have on that, I would appreciate. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, thank you all so much for your testimony and for the meetings we had prior to the hearing. I look forward to continuing to work with you as we look to how we do workforce development better in the city of Philadelphia. So quickly, I just wanted to ask, how many open positions do you currently have in the city of Philadelphia in general?
That's something we'd have to get for. I just don't have that number off the top of my head. And are you looking for open positions as they relate to students coming out of CTE programs?
Both. So how many open positions, how many in that relate to a CTE program and or skilled trades? I also wanted to ask you about the Philly Futures program. I think they had a connection with the sanitation department. Could you talk about the Philly Future Track program?
Philly Future Track was a little bit different than the Philly Futures program. The Philly Future Track was designed by Streets, it's got to be 10 years ago now, and now it's sort of being managed through the Office of Workforce Development. And what I would do is ask Zakiya, because I haven't been involved with that program for a little while, if Zakiya Ali can come up, she can talk a little bit about the Future Track program.
Okay.
Good morning, Council. Zakiya Ali, Office of Workforce Development. So the Philly Future Track was designed several years ago by the Streets Department, specifically to provide opportunities to Philadelphia residents, particularly opportunity youth that were either not in school or not working. And so those individuals received on-the-job training through the Streets Department. And if there were open opportunities, some of those individuals were able to apply for those positions and transition into permanent employment with the Streets Department in positions such as field investigator, public works maintenance trainee, and engineering aid trainee. Since the Office of Workforce Development has come along, our partnership with the Streets Department has strengthened, and what we've done is we've redesigned the program somewhat so that individuals are better prepared to meet the needs of the Streets Department, both from a technical training standpoint as well as from a soft skills standpoint. So we've enhanced the curriculums both on the job and added a robust classroom component so that once individuals graduate, they are either on track to move into a position with the Streets Department or with the private sector employer.
Thank you. So just to clarify for the record, that program or participation in the program, I believe it was 5 months, was not a guarantee of full-time employment or any type of leg up in the civil service application process?
So just to clarify, like many employers, employment is not guaranteed. Individuals do have to complete specific requirements to graduate. Upon graduation, individuals are eligible for specific civil service positions. What we help them do is to apply for those positions while they're still in the program, so that upon completion, many of them move into continuing to doing on-the-job training, so that when the vacancy is open, they can more seamlessly move directly into that position. So there is a direct pipeline from graduation into permanent employment.
And how many young people would you say are currently employees of the city of Philadelphia who graduated from that program? And how many young people completed the program in total?
We would have to pull some specific data, but I'll tell you what I have for the 2 years that we've been managing the program in partnership with the Streets Department. And when you say young people, we do track their ages. I wanted to be clear that young people can be a bit relative. We can pull some very specific data to cut off for what we consider opportunity youth versus any individuals that might be above that, because we don't necessarily discriminate on age for these programs, although we do primarily recruit from certain populations where young people have opportunities.
Sure.
And I'll continue to take questions until I pull up our placement data.
So how many current programs do we have in total across the city of Philadelphia?
Yep, so under City as model employer, we have 8 career pathway programs. And that's not to say that other departments might not have some programming as well, but specifically under that initiative, there are 8 programs.
Okay, thank you.
For the Philly Future Track program, within the last 2 fiscal years, 32 individuals have transitioned to full-time permanent employment in the streets department, and 2 individuals have transitioned to full-time permanent employment in the private sector.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments from members of the committee for these witnesses? We want to thank you all so very much for your testimony. And, you know, before you leave, let me just note for the record just a few data points that when we do have our hearing on bill number 200007, I would like for you to come prepared with just asking, on average, how many civil service jobs open up in 1 year? Just on average. I don't want the answers right now, but when you come back, how many veterans apply for civil service jobs in a year? How many legacies, meaning their parents died in the line of duty, apply for civil service jobs in a year? And then on average, how many CTE grads apply for civil service jobs in a year? In addition to that, can you give us, come prepared with data on the following: the current percentage of people of color in both police and fire, how many people were a part of the new police class, and how many of those people were people of color? Because we want to demonstrate Philadelphia's demographic, and then we want to talk about the overall demographic for the city of Philadelphia's workforce across the board. So if you could come prepared to just give us that information. And I don't know whether or not, because I know we talked about this offline at another meeting, is it at all possible without getting into any privacy issues, is there a way for us to map by zip code Philadelphia employees? Without no privacy issues, no addresses, but I mean mapping. So in zip code 19141, we have X number of Philadelphia employees.
I believe we should be able to do that. It's going to be whether we get that information out and we can work with someone from the geo spectrum from the standpoint of mapping that out. We should be able to do that, but let me go back and talk to our tech people.
Because that would be, that's a really good snapshot, even for residents in the city of Philadelphia, just in general, to know that city of Philadelphia workers are everywhere and in every zip code across the board. So that would be very helpful from a transparency perspective. Thank you all so very much for your testimony.
Thank you very much for having us.
Will the clerk please call the second panel of witnesses to testify? And again, just want to note for the record, at approximately 11:20, we are going to briefly recess our public hearing and go into our public meeting.
Patrick Clancy.
want to say good morning to you, Mr. Clancy. It's always an honor to see you, and when I see you, I always think workforce development expert. Please state your name for the record and feel free to proceed
Good morning,
with your testimony.
Councilwoman. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Patrick Clancy, President and CEO of Philadelphia Works. We are the city's workforce development board charged with investing the federal and state funds that are awarded to the city of Philadelphia for people who are in transition. So today I come to you excitedly to talk a little bit about why we are in support of this ballot question. We believe that giving our young people who are transitioning from school to work as many options as possible. We believe that the CTE programs that they have been embarking upon for the past couple of years really are a career pathway. And I think when we think of where do young people want to go to work, I think looking at the city of Philadelphia as a great place. Having some people I know personally that work for the city, they love the opportunity, they love the pathways, and we believe that this is a great option for some of our students. We also believe that our students are really very well educated. I mean, the stats will show that if the students who take 2 or more CTE courses are less likely to drop out of high school. We also know that students concentrating in CTE have test scores equal to those who are college prep students. So we believe that our students who are at the District of Philadelphia receiving CTE programming, that this will give them a chance to look at sort of middle-class jobs, right? And I think the part of the challenge that we see with some of our other customers is if they have gone to college and unable to secure employment, they have a huge debt load, which is crushing us as a system and as a city. So we believe as many options as there are as possible for young people to engage in work, and have this be an incentive as one of them would be a great opportunity for them. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. How quick was that, huh? Pretty quick.
You were. You
I don't want to miss
that.
the 11:20.
He did well. He's been there before. You can tell he's an expert, Councilman. No, he's an expert. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
First, I just want to say thank you for your testimony
Sure.
and for your ongoing commitment to workforce development in the city of Philadelphia. It's been an honor to work with you and visit your office. You and Mr. Joines, all the work you are doing is really, really excellent. So thank you so much. I just wanted to ask you a quick question relative to partnerships in and around Philadelphia Works relative to the private sector.
Sure.
Can you talk about some of those CTE pathways to employment programs and or initiatives that you know of and or work with in the private sector?
Yeah, so we've been working with the University of Penn through a program called Penn First, which was helping some of our CTE graduates actually get jobs that were aligned with the huge construction of the Penn project. We also do a lot of work with the healthcare sector. So we actually have apprenticeships into healthcare careers. We have apprenticeships into Temple University Hospital. We also have apprenticeships into Aramark. We are working on apprenticeships into Comcast and other large corporations. Our board is 51% private sector. We actually have a youth standing committee that makes sure that our investments in youth actually align well with what the economy is sort of bearing at this point in time. So we are definitely looking at more and more private sector partnerships.
Thank you. And relative to looking at the labor market forecast for the city of Philadelphia, how do you work with those private sector companies to ensure that we are aligning, or your company is aligning, job opportunities for young people and or underemployed or unemployed individuals?
Yeah, very good question. So what we do first is actually meet with the employer to actually design the training program with them. I think the years of us just training people and hoping they go to work just wasn't relevant. And I think having the employers be part of the conversation to design it, but also add incentives. We have some federal and state incentives around on-the-job training that really help mitigate the risk, right? So when you look at some employers who may be a little hesitant to hire some of our customers, we utilize that tool to help them better understand that these individuals just need a chance.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman O.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. Mr. Clancy, would you be in favor of giving preference points to graduates of community college?
So in all transparency, I'm on the board of community college. I'm a board of trustee, so I think that's somewhat of a loaded question. I did hear your statements earlier, and I think, having the question posed as a ballot question is really important. I think getting into the specifics of how the preference will work out, I think the devil will be in the details later.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Would you be in favor of giving a preference to persons with physical disabilities?
Would I be so that would, in terms of what? In terms of?
Giving a hiring preference.
So,
Madam Chair, point of information.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to say for the record that this hearing is relative to the legislation to give a preference for career and technical education programs, and I respectfully disagree with the line of questioning from my colleague. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Point of order noted, and our colleague help us here.
Thank you very much. I'll try to get to the point as best I can. I'm going to assume that you're in favor of any kind of preference for persons who you deem to be disadvantaged, and that you would like to help them to be able to get a job. I would also assume that you would not be in favor of disadvantaging any group of persons, such as single mothers, graduates of 2-year degrees. The giving of a 10-point preference is an advantage and a disadvantage in a competitive setting, and there has been a limited preference for veterans and children of those who have died in the line of duty. I'm just understanding that you are generally in favor of giving preferences of some level to help people get jobs.
So I would say that as an organization that is charged with getting as many people back to work on career pathways, that's really where we focus our energies and our investments. We make sure that individuals are highly trained, that they're relevant for the workforce that is in demand right now, but also in the future. So I would say I'm a big proponent of maximizing the use of our private sector minds that are on our board and making sure that we make those investments properly.
If a preference is given for CET, as in this case, does that create a disadvantage for graduates of a community college?
You know what? I don't think I have the expertise to comment on that, to be honest.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Are there any other questions for this panel of witnesses? Hearing none, I want to thank you, Mr. Clancy, and again, honor and privilege to always have you in this council. Thanks. Your years of experience in workforce development, particularly from my tenure in Harrisburg, and the work that you do with us here in the city of Philadelphia is very much appreciated, and I just wanted to say that for the record.
I appreciate it. Have a great day. Thank you.
Will the clerk please call the third panel of witnesses to testify?
Jonathan Jacobs, Marie Wilkins Walker, Jose Morales Jr., and Nadiria Johns.
Again, just want to remind all of those coming to testify, we do have copies of the testimony that you submitted. I want you to feel free to summarize your testimony if you choose to read it, up to you. But I just wanted to make sure that option was available. And as you're seated, I want whomever starts first, just make sure you identify yourself for the record and the benefit of our stenographer, and feel free to proceed with your testimony. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Jacobs. I'm a career awareness specialist with the School District of Philadelphia. I'm speaking today also as a veteran, an educator, and a concerned citizen that's born and raised here in Philadelphia, and also a graduate from a neighborhood public high school in Philadelphia. As a veteran, I believe that education is also a national security issue. Preparing and assuring the city has an educated and qualified workforce is crucial to the success of the city, country, and attracting development and maintaining our infrastructure safety and security. As you know, Philadelphia was founded in 1682, and our houses, roads, bridges, water treatment systems, electrical systems, environmental remediation is lacking. And we need the students and the skills that we have here in our youth that we're lacking to build our city back up and providing them the opportunity. According to PhilaWorks, the Department of Labor, the careers related to the fields that would fix these up are all high priority occupations, and the demand shortage goes through the year 2026. And most of these careers that we're talking about have also remained high priority occupations going back to 2002. So for me, providing the city's youth, most of who live in poverty, which we have invested so much time and money and opportunities to earn a living wage and a career after high school, is also a way to fight crime. By giving them this opportunity to have a career, we've seen students that go on and buy houses 2-3 years out of high school. And so connecting them to work is also another way to keep them engaged in school while they're there. And in fact, the data does show that CTE graduates have a higher rate of graduation than traditional public school students. As an educator involved with job development for numerous years, I have seen firsthand many of our students being passed up or not being given opportunities due to not having established connections as other students in the suburbs or other city students might have. I've seen many unions hire family members and other union members that are friends and family, and I fight very hard to find these opportunities for the youth, and usually have to find these allies that'll help get the students in, but they're never sustainable as that person leaves. When our students do get in, the companies are usually surprised that our students do excel and do amazingly well. CTE students go through a rigorous 1,080 hours of technical training in their field. They receive numerous industry certifications and take exams that are not graded by their teachers, but by others in industry, giving them their relevancy. Any resource that allows for opportunities for our students to be qualified in high-demand fields keeps the talent local and improves the quality of life, not just for the students, but all Philadelphians, and it's a great way to start breaking the cycle of poverty. I appreciate all of the stakeholders invested in helping us diversify fields and giving Philly youth the opportunity they need to compete. The city of Philadelphia really can be a shining example to other businesses, showing just how qualified our kids are, and lead by example that they too should be providing opportunities to our youth. Let them follow your example. Thank you.
Good morning. Councilwoman and council members? First, I would like to thank Jonathan Jacobs and the council members for allowing me to speak as an alumni of the CTE school. My name is Jose Morales Jr. I'm a graduate of Jules E. Mastbaum, class of 2013. The CTE program I chose during my high school years was residential wiring. It was during these years of high school where my curiosity for learning the theory behind electricity and the application of it grew. I'm here to ask that you vote yes for the CTE preference bill. While I was going through high school, I was able to complete 5 internships. With companies such as PICO, Amtrak, DC 21, District Council 21. These internships were attainable because of the hard work and connections made through the staff at Mastbaum and the rest of the staff members in the Philadelphia School District down on 440 North Broad Street. These opportunities allowed me to share the room with people who were in charge of hiring and firing. In a summary, it allowed me to shine, as a young adult. CTE students in Philadelphia commit to doing hard work like this every year, and I believe rewarding them with a job preference is a good way to put them to work right here in Philadelphia. After high school, I attempted to, get my, degree as an electrical engineer at Bloomsburg University. I quickly realized I couldn't work in an office setting being diagnosed with mild obstructive sleep apnea. After 3 years, I decided to drop out because of financial reasons. I went back to Philadelphia, and I was working in the Franklin Mills Mall in a retail store. While working there, I decided to apply to the Electricians Union in April 2017. Thankful to a man by the name of Charles Lewis, who is a retired, who worked for the Philadelphia School District, and Julio Padilla, who also worked at Mastbaum during my years at Mastbaum, for connecting me with an individual who was actually a retiree from the Electricians Union, who put together a program called CAP, Construction Apprentice Proprietary Program. With that connection, fast forwarding to today, I'm a fourth-year apprentice electrician for IBEW Local 98. Having had the pleasure of doing what I was fascinated, starting in my sophomore year in high school. I think giving students, the preference for getting into a city job is a first step. But I think what's more important is giving students an opportunity and an option. I would have never known about the electricians union if someone haven't gave me the option to apply. If I would have known they were offering city jobs when I was in school, I would have probably have applied, to multiple. The important thing, is to give students options and opportunities. I would have probably never been in the electricians union if it weren't for Charles Lewis and Julio Padilla, if Councilwoman Blackwell didn't help put together the Pen Assist program, and Mr. Clancy and Mr. Jones, with Philadelphia Works for putting that program together. My father wouldn't have been working for Amtrak if Steve Herring, who was another employee of the Philadelphia School District, didn't present the opportunity to intern at Amtrak, when he did. By voting yes on this bill, many of the students may have similar opportunities to land a good skilled labor position in the city, one that I did not know was available when I graduated the program. Again, I ask you all to vote yes in this bill in order to help the students that work hard to learn a skill get gainful employment right here in Philadelphia. Thank you.
We want to thank you so very much for your testimony. And before we begin, I just have to note for the record that now we have this little procedural process that we need to go through, so please be patient with us. It has come to my attention that certain members of this committee need to leave on council business, so I will very briefly recess the public hearing and go into a public meeting to allow those members to leave their votes for the record before they depart. The chair, we will now recess the public hearing and go into the public meeting, and the chair recognizes Councilmember Gimm.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I just want to thank this panel for your wonderful testimony and appreciate the deeply personal perspective that you bring to this conversation. It's really very much appreciated, and want to give a shout out to our fantastic school district director, CTE, in the back, in our audience there. Thank you for supporting this program, for believing in it, for bringing it to life, and this is again an effort to make a promise to you, your team, and your hard work, and of course, to all the young people who are here. So thank you very much. So thank you, Madam Chair. I need to leave the public hearing for official council business and wish to be recorded as voting aye on any motion to support Bill number 20006 from this committee, and ask that it favorably with rules of suspension to permit first reading at the next session of council. And I would like to also be recorded as voting aye on any motion to report resolution number 200040 from this committee with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you very much. The chair now recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I need to leave the public hearing on council business and wish to be recorded as voting aye on any motion to report Bill number 200006 from this committee favorably with rule suspension to permit first reading at the next session of council, and aye on any motion to report resolution number 200040 from this committee with a favorable recommendation.
The chair thanks the councilwoman. Thank you, Council Members Gimm and Councilwoman Bass. We will now return to the public hearing and continue taking testimony, and we only have 2 members left of this panel, and want to thank you all so very much for your patience. We appreciate it. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
CTE instructor of Philadelphia School District. It's with great honor that I present to the Mayor, City Council, and our great citizens of Philadelphia a snapshot of the added pre- and post-educational benefits of this powerful legislation. The timing could not be greater, as February is CTE month. This legislation has the ability to impact CTE students on a social and economical platforms, and is powerful leverage for parents looking for the best educational option for their students. This legislation mirrors articulation agreements, which where students receive college credits for completion of CTE programs of study, SOAR, students occupationally and academically ready. These agreements vary across the state, but impact CTE students in a positive, value-added method. Reminding students how valuable industry and 21st century skills are to the individual and to our society. Students in CTE programs across the city understand the value of the industry-level training and skills they learn. Students over 3 years in the program commitment, having the opportunity to receive bonus points added to a civil service exam score will encourage CTE students to stay in Philadelphia after high school and build our workforce capacity. It has been my experience over my teaching career under the CTE umbrella that Philadelphia students overall need the opportunity to and academically. CTE programs build skilled leaders that are college and career ready. We as educators understand that the educated students have choices. This legislation brings an additional opportunity to earn a life-sustaining wage to our educated students, opening doors and career options and growth within our city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. The School District of Philadelphia currently has 5,314 CTE students enrolled in 113 CTE programs of study, covering all national 16 career clusters. Our CTE students receive over 180 hours of training. The data reveals that CTE students graduate on time, ready for college and career. Career and technical education programs provide industry-driven, real-world experience for all participants. Below is a list of sampling from West Philadelphia High School, which I am not going to read. I'm going to let my student give you the rest of the information. I have one data point I'd like to share with you. The U.S. Department of Education states, 8 years after their expected graduation date, students who focused on career and technical education courses while in high school had higher median annual earnings than other students who did not focus on CTE. Please allow this legislation to be the springboard of our future CTE workforce and our commitment to the students educated in the city of Philadelphia. Thank you.
I already had 2 votes for it.
Hi, my name is Nadira Johns, and I am a current senior at West Philadelphia High School, AP student and speed girl. Yes, I am an athlete too. I've been in school's computer system networking program since 10th grade. After being in this program for 3 years, I recognize the invaluable skills and opportunities that I have gained due to this program. For this reason, I feel compelled to inform you of the many aspects of CTE programs that makes it worthwhile for students at West, and hopes that you will seek just and equitable legislation for our future workforce and students completing CTE programs across the city. Listed below are examples of skills and opportunities that I have gained since being a part of the Career Technical Education Program. In this program, I gained leadership skills by being the project manager of Chromebooks, battery replacement. I was able to teach other students how to replace batteries and use different tools. We have a class called the Makerspace, and in this class, we are able to participate in different STEM activities. CTE provides a social, economical boost for students. It would build a skilled workforce of the city of Philadelphia. I was able to observe students from my school competing in competitions against students from all over in the STEM industry at Skills USA Conference in Hershey, PA. In 11th grade, we had a project called Genius Hour, where though we had a choice to do something on a career interest or something we learned in class. Mine was on cybersecurity. I actually took an online class on this because of my interest of being an FBI agent. In my CTE program, we are able to earn up to 13 credits, college credits as completers, and we leave with an industry certification. And also, I am currently interning at Drexel University with Dr. Kareem Edward and the CSEA STEM Lab. Thank you.
Listen, we want to thank each of you for your testimony here today. And I want to really thank you, Marie Wilkins Walker, for putting those data points on the record. If you saw me glance over at Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson, I was saying, yes, she's getting those actual numbers that we need on the record. Nadir, we're extremely proud of you. And Jose, you mentioned Cap. You know, you can't say Cap, we're thinking about Walt McGill, may he rest in peace, who helped to lay the foundation, but just really proud of your story and that that you pressed on, and thank each of you for your testimony. Any questions, comments, Councilwoman Richardson?
Just want to say thank you so much for being here, and to Mr. Jacobs and to all of you, particularly the young people, for being here. You make the difference. Thank you for being a part of these programs and for being in our city. We know that you have bright futures ahead of you. Quickly, I have a question regarding the career tracking for CTE programs in the district. Do we know how many students typically stay in the city of Philadelphia after graduation, and how many are employed by the city of Philadelphia? Do we do any type of career tracking for that 5,314 students?
So I would say yes, we do career track, and we have follow-up after senior year. I did look at a PowerPoint yesterday, but it wasn't specific, and I'm sure we can get those data points to you for that number. But there's somewhere around 71% were employed, and I want to say maybe 34% in their career pathway was the last data I saw from last year.
Thank you.
This is Councilman O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I may preface my question to Mr. Jacobs involving the school district with an explanation from Mr. Zakagny about the preferences for police and fire. If I could get, because I know there aren't a lot of them, but there's one that involves the public school system, and there's one on the police side that doesn't involve legacy or veterans, the Explorer program. Could you go on the record with what they are before I talk to the school district about that item?
As far as giving preference points to police and fire?
Yes, there are preferences besides legacy, and they're a much lower number, but they are more in line with a lot of our the low single digit numbers. Mr. Zakagny, could you put those on the record?
Michael Zakagny, Office of Human Resources. I think you're referring to the Police Cadet Explorer program.
Right.
I actually don't have those numbers, but we can certainly get them.
No,
for
no,
you.
not the numbers. Explain the program. I mean, how much it gets, and there is another.
Again, I don't remember what the preference is for that program.
Okay.
So that's a program that the police department works specifically with, I believe, students to make that transition. But I don't have that information
Okay.
readily available.
All right.
Okay.
Maybe before the end of the hearing, we can get it. I think it's 3 points, but I'm not positive. I know it's not 10 or 5.
So,
but
I'll-
and can you explain the preference on the fire test that is beyond what the legacy and veterans are? I know one is the paramedic certification, and another one is the Randolph program, but I want to hear a little more about those numbers.
Councilperson, can I
Is
check
there
to
anybody,
get that
by the way, I'm
information?
asking this as the chair while I'm asking, I know you're waiting for somebody to come up. Is there going to be any testimony today about, I know the last police class was very small and very non-diverse, but, you know, I've been told that they were trying for diversity. One of the reasons the class was so small was they couldn't get it no matter how hard they tried. There's other issues involved that have nothing to do with the ability of people to get in. It's getting people to, young people to apply in today's environment, which is not exactly, you know, pro-police out there in a lot of neighborhoods and communities. But I don't think there's anybody here from the police department that could give us that. Because, you know, I've been told loud and clear that everything was done possible, and that's why we have a tiny class, not a small class. It's tiny. But
So actually,
I'd like to get as much on the record here as possible, since the bill is going to be, the implementation bill is going to be later in front of Law and Government, but we're voting for that bill as well without knowing what it is.
so we'll try to get that information. Actually, to the police, there were a significant number of candidates, but as we went through the sort of selection and review process, an amazing number have fallen through. We actually do have a meeting scheduled to talk about those specific issues. I don't have that specific information now.
Okay.
We haven't met
I wish
on
they
that.
could have been here today, because it is, I think, a significant part of the discussion around this. But thank you. Mr. Jacobs, the Randolph program with the fire, there is, I believe, 3 points. I may be wrong, but there's 3-point preference for that program. It's been around a while. It's not in a charter provision, but it could be added as part of the implementation of this bill and codified that way. But it's been operational for a while. I thought when I first heard about the Randolph program several years ago that it was kind of being tested in Randolph, but it was not only going to be in Randolph because of geography and how large the city is and all that. And is there any, can you explain that it's still in one school? Is there a reason? Is it money? Is it, is it interest? Okay, that's fine.
Hello, Michelle Armstrong, Executive Director of Career and Technical Education for the School District of Philadelphia. And in regards to your question about the EMT program that we currently have at Randolph, there are conversations every year about whether or not we should expand, where we can expand. But I want to talk about why it's at Randolph. As you may know, all of our schools are citywide admit programs, right?
Right.
Randolph is a program that any young person from anywhere in the school district of Philadelphia can go. So it's not necessarily limited to that area.
Right.
Conversations regarding expanding we have to take a lot of things into consideration. We are having those conversations, but we have to take into consideration what schools have space, what is the cost of renovating these programs, what's the cost of the program, and it's also an existing partnership with us and the fire department. So it's a conversation and decision that can't be made unilaterally. It has to be made in partnership with the fire department.
Right. How long has the Randolph program been in existence?
Over about 10 years. I would argue maybe a little bit more than 10 years, but yes, about 10 years.
It seems to me like if we're going to be expanded, it would have happened already. But that's a long, we're a testing period. That's a long time that for whatever reasons, and I'm not questioning any of them, believe me,
Okay.
between budget and facilities and everything else, but it does limit, even though it's citywide, somebody that's going to have to travel an hour and a half each way versus 15 minutes to a half hour each way, it does enter into decisions. But I appreciate the information. That's all I really want, because what I'm really getting at is, for Mr. Jacobs or anyone else, is has there been any discussion at the school district to develop a program in conjunction with the police department that would mirror what we've been doing for 10 years with the fire EMT, whether it's based on the Explorer program, and would have what would be a significant incentive. In the fire test, 3 points is like gold, platinum, everything you can imagine, because everyone's lumped around 100 on the test. So those that have preference, it's really meaningful. If there was 1 point, it's extremely meaningful. But has there been any discussion about having that same program developed with the police department, same kind of program, I mean something as analogous as you could possibly make it, to mirror it and have a CT, program that would identify with that? I don't know, but it's something I'd like to at least discuss or have on the record today. If there's been discussions, if there hasn't been, what have been the obstacles, that kind of thing.
We've had discussions. We've looked at the feasibility of actually having a successful program, including finding a qualified teacher. As you know, someone stated that we have regulations regarding what a teacher could be. So there's been conversations about that. We haven't moved forward in the past, but every year we try to align and open and expand programs that align to the needs, the workforce needs of the city. And we are open to engaging in that conversation now and in the future, as you testified or shared, that there is a need for young people to enter or access to the police department, and we are willing to engage in that conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman O'Neill. I will just ask for your patience. Please don't leave, because we have some more comments and questions. It has come to my attention that certain members of this committee need to leave on council business, so I will briefly recess the public hearing and go into a public meeting to allow those members to leave their votes for the record before they depart. We will now recess the public hearing and go into a public meeting, and the chair recognizes Councilmember Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, I need to leave this committee hearing on council business outside of the City Hall chambers. I wish to be recorded as voting aye on any motion to report bill number 20006 from this committee favorably with a rule suspension, so this bill can have first reading at our next session of council. Also want to vote aye on a motion to report resolution number 200040 from this committee with a favorable recommendation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So noted, Councilman Green. We will now return to the public hearing and continue taking testimony, and the chair recognizes Councilwoman Maria Canones Sanchez.
Thank you. I wanted to ask our person from HR to come back up, our interim director, Mike, to come back up just to have a conversation. I think this is such a worthy conversation. I apologize for not being here for part of the conversation as it relates to CTE in particular, but before we go in there, I know that in my new role as Chair of Education, we are going to continue to have these conversations. I have to remind my colleagues that over the course of the last 10 years, when Corbett slashed a lot of this money, our money for CTE is funded at the state level. And so it is unfair for us to expect the school district, when it's juggling this, and again, real personal to me as a graduate of a CTE program, and again, having experience when we had a lot of money and the ability to get kids trained and on-site and job sites, and we're going to get there, and I welcome that conversation definitely in this budget and as we move forward. But my council colleague brings up some issues that a continuing conversation around our testing methodology, how we exclude people from this process, right? Fire department is very different. I fund the Fire Explorers. That list gets exhausted. every single time, right? And I think for the next year or two, that's going to get exhausted. As it relates to the police department, I think it's important in this conversation and for all of us to understand how many people get excluded that don't even get ranked, right? And so I'm asking you, what is the percentage of folks who apply, who get excluded, who don't even make it to the list? And then how many people will any preference point, Philadelphians, whatever, could any preference help, right? So that we can get to that point of diversity.
A multi-hurdle. They go through some reading examinations. They'll go through a physical test from the standpoint, I think they run a mile and a half. So there's all these different points where people fall by the wayside. So one of the things that we're actually looking at.
And do you think all those testing methodologies are fair to Philadelphians and people of color who come from these
I
neighborhoods?
believe some of those are required by the state. So I'd have to check to make sure which ones were. So what the police department does, now I don't know whether the specific test that they use for reading is actually required by the state or whether there's not. I know that it's a reading test that's well known within that community and so forth. My wife's a reading specialist, so I actually asked her about that. So what we're going to actually look at though, because the last class I just realized was extremely tiny from that standpoint. So what we're doing is we're getting together to sort of look at what that funnel looks like, and we're looking at those funnels for a number of different positions, how people drop off at various points within the process. Because one of the challenges we have as we're using testing methodologies is that there's implicit bias in a lot of these standardized tests. It's one of the reasons that colleges went away from the SATs. So we acknowledge that, we know that. The challenge for us is how do we put together a selection process that's fair to everybody and also still has the rigorous competition component that the charter requires. I've been in education a long time, and I understand the challenges with that. So one of the things that we're starting to do now is trying to test some other ways of doing it and looking at different types of skills tests so that we can better. But from this standpoint, again, when I started off, we are not opposed to the goal of really reaching out and creating these partnerships with schools. I think that's an unbelievably important aspect, especially with the way education requirements are going to change over the next 10 years. Companies are dropping requirements for degree requirements. You're going to see a major change in the education environment just within the nation. So we've got to be prepared for that. And one of the ways is really looking at those programs that develop these specific types of skills that we can use within the city of Philadelphia.
I appreciate that because it has been a challenge. And again, as someone who never tested well, now we have fancy terms, implicit bias and all of those things. The fact is that not all things are equal, right? And in the world, as we try to design and level out the playing field, I don't want the good to be the enemy of the perfect. The fact of the matter is, I'm glad that we're talking about this testing bias because I am of the belief that there's a certain level of reading, math, and some other skills that people need, and from that point on, it should be more random than it is, right? Because we've created a system where, and again, I have supported the veterans preference, the legacy preference, all of those things, because anything that helps us promote Philadelphians and the kind of diversity that we want. But I also understand as someone who has advocated unsuccessfully in getting the human services components to really look at language, particularly with first responders, because this is now about safety. You don't want to be in a fire and someone speaking Spanish or Chinese and people don't know. For police, I think it's a safety issue across the board, and that the institutions have resistance to that, right? Because certain people want to acknowledge skills or categorize skills in their definition. And so I think it's important that we have a broader conversation because I think what we learned from the previous administration who added the 2 years college, did a bunch of stuff till now is that we really, what is the goal? What is the spirit of the goal? Everybody wants highly qualified, committed folks to come into the system. But to have a notion that the system is fair, When we know it isn't, we need to acknowledge that, and then we need to acknowledge how do we work through those tension points, right? As we reach, this broader audience. But the numbers speak for themselves. How many people get excluded speaks for itself. The lack of diversity in the classes, and within those four speak for itself. We can argue all we want. The numbers are the numbers. And who has access and who doesn't is very, very clear. And we should all be committed to work and make that better, right? Because it's not about excluding a group, it's about leveling out the playing field when all things are not equal.
And I can't agree with you more. It's one of the things that we're pressing more within our agency, to look at the data. And sometimes it's a challenge at times to get data out of our systems. But Wes, one of the things that we're looking at clearly is how does that funnel, where are people sort of falling out of the process? Is there anything we can do different to sort of affect that? We're working closely with the Office of Inclusion and Diversity and Inclusion, Nolan's group. So it is something that is, I know, top of the administration, but it's also very important for us as an office.
And I remind folks that testing companies make a whole lot of money. All of this stuff testing is a big business all across the board, and we're trying to get to Philadelphians who are committed, who have identified a coursework where they want to be in public service. And I take the public service part of this, particularly for first responders, very, very serious. The folks that I know who are my friends, I'm running out of a fire, they're running into a fire, total respect for that. But we can get to a better place, and we have to acknowledge that we've not done the job we could. So I appreciate it, and I look forward to that conversation.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, I just want you to stay there just for a second. I want to just lend my voice to this and say, one, to thank the administration and Mayor Kenny, number one, for your being very transparent and acknowledging publicly on the record that we as a city, we've already had on our radar screen that we needed to review, cross-reference, and really figure out, how and why issues relative to diversity and inclusion across city government, what are we doing wrong? And I appreciate you just acknowledging that process on the record. In addition to that, if we went back to the notes of testimony from our last budget session, all of these questions regarding police and fire relative to the testing and the numbers, and the police, they talked about difficulty in recruiting, particularly in minority communities. They talked about going to John Jay, the HBCU, tour that they did. I mean, working hard. So we know that the police department has taken some very specific steps to address this issue, and we can't say enough about fire. But what I want the public to know, and when we were going through the hearings, this became very frustrating. Because it's our job to raise these questions, no one in the city of Philadelphia should leave from watching at home or out of this room and thinking that each and every member of this body does not wholeheartedly support the men and women who put their lives on the line for us on a daily basis, that we don't wholeheartedly support fire, just all of the work that they do as first responders, addressing the gun violence, protecting us. I mean, they risk their lives, and we respect that, and we all have records that we've supported them and will go to war over them, particularly, Councilwoman, my captains in it, don't mess with them because we're going to fight for them in every district it is, right? But that doesn't mean that we don't ask these questions right now. So I just wanted to say thank you and thank the administration for your willingness to partner and work with council in order to address these issues.
Appreciate that.
Chair recognizes Councilman O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank Councilwoman Sanchez. She enunciated a lot of things and elicited some testimony that is extremely good, and I agree with you on that. When you're producing the some of the requested information with exclusion, demographics of the exclusion, make sure you include the reasons, because it'll help many of us with that. And you mentioned trying to improve the test, and I know it comes up in budget hearings, it comes up in other discussions. The one thing I'm a big believer in is that there's somebody out there that's doing it right, and there may actually be a lot more than one in this case. But you don't have to go to, we just hired a new police commissioner from what many people is a large city, but not compared to New York or Philadelphia or Chicago or LA. But that might be a good place to start in Portland. They're about as progressive as it comes in the country. But that places that are not having this problem, now, Portland may be a bad example because I don't know what their citizen demographic is. But certainly with Chicago, LA, Atlanta, different cities like that, Dallas, we know that there's a significant minority component. So maybe we can look at what's already been done. Maybe it's been working for a long time, that we don't have to keep studying to get there. And then the last thing is that the new commissioner coming in, probably new brass, as we call them, maybe they can jump in early on this, and when their learning curve is going on, because if we've been working on this for years, it's obviously not producing it. But I have one technical question. I didn't think of it earlier. Is there a preference in police and fire in the police and fire test? In that, I think it's in that 3-point range of EMT, Randolph, that is for bilingual.
Yes, there is.
Is it?
And I believe it's 3 points. Yes.
It's a 3-point?
Yes.
So in fire particularly, because I don't get as much on the lumping of everybody at the top of the fire test, where you can make the class if you have a preference, and if you get 100, you probably stand a very small chance of getting in. But I just wanted to get that on the record, because obviously that is pretty tough if somebody doesn't understand somebody else, and we could have avoided that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for any members of the panel? Hearing none, thank you all so very much for your testimony. Now let me just ask, is there anyone else who is present who is interested in testifying on this bill? If so, please feel free to come up. Yes, come approach. And while our next panel is coming up, Councilman, I just want to agree with you wholeheartedly on the idea of Commissioner Outlaw and her fresh eyes coming to the city of Philadelphia. I think we're all really excited about it because, as you noted, while we've been working on some of these issues for many, many years, it'll be great to view the issue through the lens of someone who's worked in other places with knowledge of those best practices that you referenced, that you could find in other locales similarly situated is Philadelphia. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
It would also be interesting for us, if even if it has to be done privately, to see in those 30-some interviews that were done before they reduced to finalists, this had to be a question. What good stuff came out of the people that didn't get chosen, but provide, because you got to be taking notes on what's working in Boston or what's working in Chicago or some other city or cities, and that maybe we're just not doing but could be doing fairly quick and easy even. Okay, thank you.
Gentlemen, feel free to state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Madam Chairperson, council members, good morning. My name is George Ginder. I'm a proud veteran and a graduate of a technical program. I'm also a member of the Philadelphia Veterans Advisory Commission. In speaking for myself and for the Veterans Advisory Commission, we are opposed to this question being placed on the ballot in April. Having only learned of this program in the last 24 hours, I contacted a number of veterans, including my fellow commissioners, and no one is in favor of this question as it reads. The preference program was designed to recognize preference and give preference to veterans who have served their country, to firefighters and police officers, the families of firefighters and police officers who have been killed in action. This program is specially identified for veterans, firefighters, and police officers. Now there's an amendment being proposed to add someone from a technical program. Council members, there may be a need to recognize people who are graduating from such a program and other programs, but I don't believe, and my fellow commissioners don't believe, that it should be attached to the amendment where it says here, preference, it's given preference to entrance on the test. My fellow commissioners don't believe in it, and I don't believe in it as it is worded right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone with any further comments? Want to just thank you all so very much for your testimony. Any questions or comments? Yes, sir. Feel free to just state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Council. My name is Carlo Argancillo, Director of Veterans Affairs for the City of Philadelphia. I do agree there needs to be a solution to develop a pipeline from education to skilled workforce, bridge the skill gaps for vacant jobs, and also upskill our youth to set them up for success. But I also wanted to note and remind Philadelphians, the city of Philadelphia was the nation's first capital, the birthplace of 3 out of the 5 branches, Army, Navy, and Marine Corps. And the reason why I say that is, as a military community to date is the most diverse workforce to include, male and female, people of color, LGBTQ, from all walks of life, all backgrounds. You have to consider they have years of experience with skills, not just by trade, but also in leadership positions, in combat roles and support roles, where lives are at stake. And after exiting the military, they also come away with certifications in education as well. The City of Philadelphia, in an effort to do the right thing, established the Veterans Advisory Commission in an advisory role in 1957. They only just recently, in 2019, formally established the Office of Veterans Affairs for the City of Philadelphia. So the reality is, there is work to be done out there to support veterans and their families. As of 2018, the last 5-year estimates from American Community Survey, based on the, from the Census Bureau, list that we have on or around 59,000 veterans proper that live in Philadelphia County, but that's not considering the family members and dependents as well, which equal to about 120 to 130 people in Philadelphia. In addition to Councilman O's tax credit that he introduced back in 2012, the only official policy that exists affecting veterans is that 10-point preference within civil service. Veterans are an underrepresented population. As of 2017, only 1.8% of the 30,000 workforce is comprised of veterans. Every year, 200,000 service members exit the military, coming into City of Philadelphia and other major metropolitan areas. My challenge to City Council and actually the City of Philadelphia is the City of Philadelphia ready and able to support even 1% of those veterans, 2,000 people coming into the City of Philadelphia? The answer is no, but we're getting ready and we're posturing to make it a ready city. 19 years ago, we started the Afghanistan and Iraq war. So as of 2020, we're still fighting these endless wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We say that we support our troops, but the reality is we haven't done enough. The only existing initiative is the Veterans Hiring Initiative through the Civil Service 10-point preference. My office, the Office of Veterans Affairs, working with the Office of Human Resources and also Workforce Development, also reaching out to PA, Department of Military Veterans Affairs, working with the Governor's Office, also the Pentagon, DOD, DOL, and the VA. We're working to increase visibility of existing hiring initiatives, to backfill necessary positions to build up, support, and protect our city by honoring and hiring our veterans and their families. This is best supported by preserving the existing veterans preference. So I ask you, in designing and implementing the CTE preference, should that take effect, please also consider the veterans and their families as they reintegrate back into our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first, I want to say thank you so much for your service, your commitment to our country, and your service to the people that we serve. As the daughter of an Army veteran, and I now have my legislative aide, Sean, I just want to recognize you, who served 3 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq in 2003 and 4, 2004 through 2006, and 2008 and 2009. And he was the person who actually drafted this legislation. So I also want to thank you for your service. I do agree also as a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, where we partner with Women's Veterans Rock and just gave them a $25,000 donation, that we have to continue to do all that we can for our veterans, not only in the city of Philadelphia, but across our country. We need to ensure that we are doing all we can to connect you with employment opportunities, both in the public sector and the private sector. But I also do think we need to do more for young people in our career and technical education programs as well, and that will be addressed in the other committee hearing that's not today, that will be scheduled at a later time. So I would like you to come back and we can have subsequent and further conversation in between now and that hearing, so we can adequately take in your comments and concerns and ensure that we are looking to address them as we move forward with the legislation. But thank you so much for being here today, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your service.
Chair recognizes Councilman O'Neill.
Yeah, I thank you for coming, for your testimony, and for your service, all 3 of you. And I want to just state, well, I stated earlier in the hearing, I'm in agreement with the intent of the bill. It is the vagueness of it'll happen later what really is on the ballot, which is that implementation bill, in addition to the general language here. I have to know more about it, and I'm going to be voting against it today. If something changes in the next week, I will vote for it on final passage. If nothing changes, and the strongest thing that I'm against is the 10 and the legacy. That it not, it be in the 2 to 3 range, which many of our other preferences are, whatever we come up with. But I do agree with you that because it's fast-tracked, there's not enough, but I think the next 8 days should be enough time to put some parameters around, even if they're not as specific as everyone would like, and that won't happen till the hearing in Labor and Civil Service, that there's some confidence next Thursday that certain things like the veterans and legacy will not be joined by the intent, the people that this bill is intended to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman O'Neill. Let me also just conclude by also saying a special thank you.
May I speak, ma'am?
Oh, sure. And that was it. We wanted all of you to speak before we began asking questions. Feel free to proceed with your testimony. Just state your name for the record.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of council. I'm Anthony F. Boyle. I am a retired Air Force veteran. I am also a member of your Veterans Advisory Commission, and it is from that position that I speak today. I'm also a member of the Philadelphia Police Department, so I have more than one interest in this legislation. And I want to speak of the significance of a permanent preference being made through this legislation. Preferences are something that should be extremely exceptional in any process. None of us like preferences in whether it be competitive activities or in just general efforts to get ahead or to get a job. That everyone should have the same opportunity, the same standing from the start. And therefore, if we do identify particular groups for preference, it needs to be exceptional.
It needs to be the exceptional veteran community, or it needs to be the exceptional group of children whose parents have lost their life in service to this city. That's a preference group that no one ever wants to be in. And so it should be the rarest of groups to get a preference over someone else. We don't like people butting in lines at the grocery store. We don't like people getting ahead of other people who are also in a particular line. So it's something that shouldn't be looked upon with any kind of cavalier, although very, very genuinely good-natured reason to do it. We could argue groups, including, as Councilman O said, people with disabilities, et cetera, that have legitimate and sometimes heartbreaking stories, but still should compete on a regular level just like everyone else. And it's the message that this bill sends as well that I question. You know, the CTE program is wonderful, but what's the message to other people who graduate from just a regular high school? Or how about the folks who may have had much greater difficulty in life and in education that got their GED through tremendous effort, who do not qualify for a particular preference? And yet we've heard today in testimony that a lot of the CTE students, just by that education, have a leg up over other graduates from just regular high schools. So to put them ahead, it could be argued putting them ahead of people with just regular general Philadelphia high school educations, that they're already on a much better path for success than just a regular high school graduate. And that's not a message that I think we should be sending. And the question also is, when does it stop? And I think that we have also proven with the more minor preferences that we get to the Explorers or to the Randolph program or to other folks, that it can be done where there is a need to be filled, and therefore maybe a temporary preference be given for a particular work set. That it can be done, and it can be done without the charter change and without the question on the ballot, et cetera. We're doing it now. And so I oppose this question being put to the electorate for two reasons. First of all, I don't think that the CTE group should be a permanent preference group like the exceptional groups that are already permanently preferred, such as veterans, such as the survivor children of the city. And the other is that this process, this question, I believe, and agree with Councilman O'Neill, it is a premature exercise. It's vote on it first, and then we'll let you know how it's going to be run or what it is you're voting on. But just vote on the idea first, and then we'll tell you the specifics. I don't think that's how it's supposed to work. If you want the electorate to vote on this particular preference, tell them what preference they're voting on. Tell them what the mechanics of it are, not just the general idea, and then down the road it can be structured however the future turns out to be. There's been, I think, too much of a rush to get this on the ballot, when I think a more debated and more considered preference, if any, can be ironed out through the legislative body, and then the election in November, or it's only a matter of months, it can be a much more deliberative process and question than this rush that we see now. And I thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your testimony and for all the points that you gave. I just want to say for the record that it is my commitment as the sponsor of this legislation to work with all stakeholders, including all of you, to talk about the tenets of the other bill that will be heard in Labor and Civil Service. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I too, let me just note for the record, I'm very fortunate in life to have been raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather was a disabled Navy veteran. I want to say to each of you, we appreciate the work that you do in our great city on behalf of one of our most valuable constituencies who has not received the attention and or supports that it needs, and I would argue from federal government, from state government to local government. There are avenues and programs that should be supported in a much more robust manner, and I know I can speak for my colleagues here and say that here in council, we look forward to continue to advocate with our veterans community at all levels and all branches of government, and we appreciate the comments that you've made here today, and we are, because we know of her work and the very meticulous nature that she employs when working through the legislative process, that the bill number is 200007. It's going to be referred to the committee, was been referred to the Committee on Labor and Civil Service, and as the chair of that committee, working in conjunction with the sponsor, please know that as soon as a date is identified in draft language, we know the sponsor will make sure that information is forwarded to each of you to share with your constituencies, and as we just go through this process and have all confidence that she will manage it as efficiently and effectively as possible and inclusive, because that's the way she has always worked. So I just want to thank you for your testimony, and I think you had a comment that you wanted to make, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to add that neither the Veterans Affairs Office or the Philadelphia Veterans Advisory Commission was alerted to this. Nothing was discussed with us. We didn't know about it until, personally, myself, 24 hours ago. I would think as a resource for council, we should have been alerted to this, about this program. Thank you.
Well, let me just note for the record again, you are here today. You have let your voices be heard. Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson, the bill's chief sponsor, has publicly noted on the record that she will do what she does, and that is to work with all stakeholders that have a nickel in this quarter, and then make sure that your voice is heard as this process moves forward. So I want to thank each of you for being here. Thank you so very much. There. Is there anyone else here to testify on bill number 20006 and resolution 200040? There being none here to testify on the bill or resolution before this committee, this concludes the public hearing. We will now go into the public meeting to consider the action to be taken on the legislation being heard today. The chair recognizes Councilmember Sanchez for a motion on bill numbers 200006.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that bill number 200006 be reported out of this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session.
Okay. It's been moved and properly seconded that the bill number 200006 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? 2 nays, O'Neill and O. And just want to note for the record and as a reminder for the public that council members Helen Gim, Cindy Bass, Derek Green have left their votes in favor prior to having to leave. The ayes have it and the motion carries. Bill number 200006 will be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, with a request that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading at the next session of council. The chair recognizes Councilmember Quinonez Sanchez for a motion on resolution number 200040.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that resolution number 200040 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation.
Second. It has been moved and properly seconded that the resolution number 200040 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? 2 nays, O'Neill and O. And also want to note for the record that council members Helen Gims, Cindy Bass, and Derek Green left their votes in favor of the resolution. The ayes have it and the motion carries. Resolution number 200040 will be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation. This concludes the business of the Committee on Law and Government. We want to thank each and every one of you for your attendance today, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.